When the first trailer for Invincible dropped, fans of the comics were hyped. The animation looked promising, the voice acting seemed solid, and the promise of a brutal, mature superhero story had people eager to see how it would translate to the screen. With Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead, behind it, expectations were high. What made the anticipation even crazier was how Invincible wasn't just another superhero adaptation, it was something incredibly fresh. The trailer gave us glimpses of that classic coming-of-age hero story, but with an edge. The vibrant colors and fluid animation lured in the casual audience, while longtime fans of the comic knew what was coming. A story that wasn't afraid to get dark, bloody, and gritty. Then there was the action. The trailer teased just enough of it to get the fans talking. That quick cut sequence of Mark learning to fly, training with his dad, and those brutal blink and you miss it glimpses of violence, it was enough to let everyone know this wasn't going to be some watered down superhero cartoon. This was going to be Invincible in all its unapologetic glory. For comic fans, the biggest question was whether the show would stay true to the comic's most shocking moments. The trailer didn't spoil anything outright, but those who had read the series knew what was coming. They scrutinized every frame, looking for clues. Would the adaptation capture the emotional weight and brutality of the source material? Would it deliver the gut punch moments that made Invincible so unforgettable? More than just excitement, there was a sense of anxious anticipation, hoping the showrunners would have the guts to do the story justice. But as the episode started rolling out, another conversation took over, one that had nothing to do with the plot twists or character arcs. Instead of just debating how faithful the adaptation was, fans started picking apart the animation. At first, the hype was real. The trailer had everyone buzzing, and expectations were sky high. But as the season progressed, some of that excitement turned into concern. The animation, which initially seemed promising, was criticized for being stiff and inconsistent. Some fight scenes were dynamic and intense, while others felt choppy and lacked the polish expected from a show with such a high-profile release. One of the biggest complaints came from Season 1, Episode 5, when Mark fought Machine Head mercenaries. The fight itself was brutal and emotional, but the frame rate drops and stiff movement made certain sequences feel sluggish. Fans also pointed out that some background characters looked unfinished or static, which made action scenes feel less immersive. This issue wasn't just limited to that episode throughout Season 1 though. Viewers noticed moments where animation shortcuts were taken, like in Episode 6 college trip sequence. While the story remained engaging, some scenes felt oddly placed, with characters moving awkwardly or lacking the fluidity expected in modern animation. There's also a scene in Season 3, with Multipole. This scene was scrutinized all over the internet right after the episode released, and it's not surprising why. It seems like the animation studio reused the same frame for a solid 3 seconds and looped it. When Season 2 had originally arrived, fans had hoped that these animation concerns would be addressed. The first 2 episodes showed clear improvements in character expressions and fight choreography, but inconsistencies were still present. The fight where Mark and Omni-Man battled the Viltrumites in Episode 4 was intense, yet some viewers noticed that certain punches and movements felt weightless, lacking the impact seen in other high-quality animated shows.
When I watch X-Men 97 or just random clips of anime, I'm just reminded of all the potential Invincible has, especially with the fight scenes and violence.
This led to debates about whether the animation was being held back by budget constraints or if the production team was struggling to balance the level of detail across each episode. The animation's lack of fluidity led to some mixed reactions. Some viewers couldn't ignore the awkward movements, the choppy fight sequences, and the moments where it felt like the visuals weren't up to par with the narrative's ambition. It was a frustrating experience for fans who were used to smoother, more refined animation in other superhero shows and movies. To a lot of people, the visual inconsistencies could have taken away from the impact of key action scenes, and some felt that the show's potential was being held back by its animation choices. But here's the thing, despite the animation criticism, Invincible still resonated with fans in a way that went way beyond its visuals. When the show aired, it was clear that the story, characters, and emotional depth were the real highlights. Sure, there were superhero battles, but the plot delved into complex relationships and the consequences of power. It explored raw emotions, leaving viewers thinking long after each episode ended. The characters, especially Mark Grayson, felt real and layered. Their development carried the show in ways that the animation couldn't alone. The voice acting, particularly from J.K. Simmons and Steven Yeun, brought these characters to life, adding depth to their struggles and making their emotional moments hit even harder. But while the writing and performances kept fans invested, the conversation around the animation wasn't going away. When Invincible Season 2 dropped, the debate came back in full force.
Invincible is a show that builds. I think you can see that Season 2 was an advancement of a lot of things that were introduced in Season 1. The stakes were higher, things got a little crazier, and there were a lot of pieces moving that were hinting at a lot of bigger stories.
Fans who had concerns in Season 1 were now watching even more closely, and for some, things looked worse. The biggest complaint weren't about the fight scenes, those were still solid, but rather the quieter, non-action moments. Characters felt less expressive, movements felt choppier, and at times it seemed like the show was cutting corners. This raised some serious concerns. Was the production struggling? Was the budget stretched too thin? Or was this an intentional animation style change that just didn't sit well with with fans. No one had a clear answer, but the fear started creeping in. If things were already looking rough in season 2, what would happen in future seasons? Robert Kirkman said that he wants to do 8 seasons of Invincible.
I don't know. I feel like we're just getting started. I mean, I'm very hopeful that this will be a show that can be around for a while.
But would the animation continue to decline, eventually hurting the show's overall impact? For a show like Invincible, where emotions and character depth are just as crucial as the action, animation plays a huge role in delivering those moments. A powerful scene can lose its impact if the expressions don't hit right, if the movement feels lifeless, or if the overall presentation isn't polished enough. That's why fans weren't just nitpicking. They truly care about the story being told in the best way possible, as they also wanted the visuals to do justice to the intensity, the heartbreak, and the weight of the narrative. And that's what makes the animation issues even stranger, when you consider Invincible's absolutely stacked voice cast. We're talking Steven Yeun, J.K. Simmons, Sandra Oh, Mahershala Ali, Walton Goggins, and the list goes on. These aren't just big names, they're powerhouse actors delivering top-tier performances. In fact, the recent season even has Breaking Bad's Aaron Paul. With a cast like that and Amazon Prime's multi-billion-dollar backing, it's weird and almost frustrating that the animation doesn't match the same level of quality. Fans have been asking the obvious question: where's all of the money going? It's not like Invincible is some indie project running on a tight budget. Amazon is one of the richest companies in the entire world, yet somehow the animation still has moments where it looks stiff, choppy, or straight up unfinished. You'd expect a show with this much talent behind it to have visuals that go just as hard as the performances, but instead it feels like there's a disconnect between the resources available and what's actually being put on screen. Imagine Invincible's voice acting with the animation of Arcane. And then there's the whole Bryan Cranston situation. Apparently, the creators tried to get him on board for a role, but he turned it down. That alone raises an interesting point. If they had the money to go after someone like Cranston, why couldn't they allocate more resources to improving the animation? It's not like they were struggling to afford talent, so what's stopping them from making the show look as good as it sounds? To be fair, Invincible is still a powerhouse of a show. The writing, the voice acting, the emotional weight, it all carries the series in a way that few animated projects can pull off. But that's exactly why the animation issue stings. Fans aren't just complaining for the sake of it. They know Invincible could be even greater if the visuals match the strength of everything else. And yet, despite all the debates about animation, Invincible continues to thrive. Season 3, in particular, has been hailed as one of the best seasons of animated television ever, proving that storytelling really matters more than frame rates or fluidity. Fans have been locked in, not because of how the show looks, but because of how it makes them feel. The emotional stakes, the character arcs, and the plot twists have solidified Invincible as one of the most compelling superhero stories of our time. It's easy to get caught up in animation quality, especially when you compare Invincible to other top-tier animated shows. Yes, there are moments where the visuals could be smoother, where movements feel stiff, or when action sequences don't hit as hard as they should. But when the writing is this strong, does it really matter? At its core, Invincible isn't just about the fights, it's about the weight behind them. The betrayals, the heartbreaks, the impossible choices that characters have to make, especially Mark Grayson's moral complex. That's what keeps people coming back. Season 3 has taken everything that made the show great and pushed it even further. The stakes feel higher than ever, and every episode leaves fans on edge. Mark Grayson's journey has been nothing short of gripping, forcing him to grow in ways that feel natural yet unpredictable. Every decision he makes carries consequences, and the way the show handles morality, power, and responsibility sets it apart from your average superhero story. Of course, that's not to say fans wouldn't appreciate better animation. No one would complain if future seasons got a visual upgrade. But at the end of the day, Invincible proves that animation alone doesn't define a show's quality. It's the heart, the writing, and the performances that truly make it great. So while the animation debates will probably never go away, Season 3 has made one thing clear: it's thriving because of everything else it does right.